It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Two of the most powerful prophecies in the entire Bible, given decades apart to two completely different people, a king and a prophet, and they're actually telling the exact same story. One vision is of this magnificent, glorious statue, the other, a total nightmare filled with monstrous beasts. Today, we're going to dive deep and unlock the secrets of Daniel chapters 2 and 7, and you'll see how they reveal one epic timeline of world history, but from two stunningly different points of view.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the king's crazy high stakes dream. Then we'll decode that mysterious statue. After that, we're jumping over to Daniel's own terrifying vision. And that's where the fun really begins. We'll put them side by side, see how they match up perfectly, explore what the stone and the sun are all about, and then wrap it all up with the big picture: earthly kingdoms versus divine judgment.
So let's get right into it. Our story kicks off in the heart of the most powerful empire on Earth, with a king who literally has the power of life and death over everyone. Picture this. It's 603 BC. We're in Babylon, and King Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man in the world, wakes up in a cold sweat. Daniel chapter 2 verse 1 tells us his spirit was so troubled that he couldn't get back to sleep. He knows this dream he just had was huge, world-changingly important, but he can't remember what it was. The details are just gone. So he calls in all his wise men, the magicians, the astrologers, the whole crew. But this isn't a normal request. He's got a test for them. He says, "Don't just interpret my dream. You have to tell me what the dream was first." And the stakes? Well, they couldn't be higher. He basically set a trap. He figured they were just faking it all this time, and this was his way of calling their bluff in the most brutal way you can imagine. I mean, you have to ask yourself, right? What in the world did this man dream about? What could possibly be so earth-shattering that it would cause this kind of reaction? This mystery right here is what sets the stage for a divine revelation that's going to echo all the way down through history. So with every wise man in Babylon literally on death row, a young Hebrew exile, a guy named Daniel, steps up, not with his own cleverness, but with a message straight from God. Daniel walks in and tells the king exactly what he saw in his forgotten dream. A huge statue, this great image. It was brilliant, majestic, but also terrifying. Daniel 2 verse 31 says its form was terrible. So this wasn't just some work of art. It was a prophetic timeline of the great world empires that would rule the earth, all seen from a human perspective. Glorious, powerful, and kind of awesome. And here's the breakdown. That head of pure gold, Daniel says, "King, that's you, that's Babylon." Then comes the chest and arms of silver, that represents the Medo-Persian Empire that would come next. Below that, the belly and thighs of bronze, that's Greece under Alexander the Great. Then you get to the legs of iron, super strong and crushing everything, a perfect picture of the Roman Empire. And finally, the feet and toes, a weird mix of iron and clay, that symbolizes the divided kingdoms that would pop up after Rome fell. But that's not where the dream ends. This is the big finale. A stone, and get this, it's cut out without hands, which means it's not man-made, it's divine. The stone comes flying in, smashes the statue right on its feet, and the whole thing just crumbles into dust. Then the stone itself grows into a massive mountain that fills the entire earth. Daniel explains this is the kingdom of God and it's going to stand forever. Okay, let's fast forward now. We're jumping about 50 years into the future, to around 555 BC. Nebuchadnezzar's long gone. Daniel is now an old man, a respected statesman, and this time, he's the one who gets a prophetic dream. And wow, is it different. Yeah, no glorious metals here. Instead, Daniel sees this great churning sea, which in prophecy often symbolizes the restless, chaotic nations of the world. And clawing their way out of this chaos are four grotesque, absolutely terrifying beasts, one after another. This is the same timeline, folks, but now we're seeing it from God's perspective. First up, there's a lion with eagle's wings, a symbol of speed and power. It's followed by this lopsided bear, with 3 ribs dangling from its mouth, being told to devour much flesh. Then, a leopard appears, but it's freakishly fast, with 4 wings and 4 heads. And last, well, the last one is an unnamed 4th beast. It's so dreadful and terrifying, it doesn't even get a proper description, just that it has huge iron teeth and 10 horns. So on one hand, we've got a magnificent statue. On the other, 4 monstrous beasts. They seem like total opposites, right? Well, as we're about to see, they are actually 2 sides of the very same prophetic coin. And this right here, this is the absolute key. From our human point of view,
We build empires, and we see them as glorious, powerful, full of amazing achievements, like that shining statue. But from God's heavenly perspective, he sees their true nature. He sees the violence, the greed, the predatory conquest. To him, they're just ravenous beasts. The parallel is just perfect. The head of gold is the lion, Babylon. The chest of silver is the bear, Medo-Persia. The belly of bronze is the four-headed leopard, which perfectly represents Greece because it famously split into 4 kingdoms after Alexander the Great died. And the legs of iron? Well, that lines up exactly with the terrifying fourth beast with iron teeth, Rome. I mean, the connection is absolutely undeniable. So if both visions are describing the same empires, it only makes sense that they'd predict the same ending, right? The end of human rule and the beginning of something that lasts forever. And that's exactly where these prophecies meet up again. In Daniel 2, the statue that represents all these human kingdoms gets completely obliterated. In Daniel 7, the beasts have their power, their dominion, stripped away from them by a divine court. So you've got 2 different visions, but both roads lead to the exact same place, divine judgment. Now check out the symbols used for God's kingdom. In Daniel 2, it's the stone that destroys and replaces everything. In Daniel 7, it's a figure like the Son of Man, who comes on the clouds of heaven and is given an everlasting dominion. You see, 2 different symbols pointing to one person, Jesus Christ, and his eternal kingdom of judgment and salvation. So, how does this all play out? Well, according to the specific interpretation in our sources, this prophecy unfolds in stages. Around 30 AD, the stone, which is the kingdom of God, gets set up on earth through Christ's ministry. Then, in 70 AD, we see a type or a foreshadowing of the final judgment. The sources see the Lord coming in the clouds, like in Daniel 7, as a judgment against Jerusalem for rejecting the Messiah. And finally, this interpretation points to 1830 AD as a time when the stone begins to roll forth with new power, destined to one day fill the entire earth. And all of this brings us to the huge, overarching theme of both of these incredible visions, the clash between the temporary kingdoms of man and the final judgment of God. Daniel 7 gives us this breathtaking peek into the heavenly courtroom. The Ancient of Days takes his seat on a throne of fire. It's interesting, one of our sources actually identifies this figure as Adam. A fiery river flows out from the throne, millions are serving him, and then the books are opened. The court is in session. This is the ultimate authority, the one before which all the beastly empires of this world are finally held accountable. So let's just boil this all down. First, Daniel 2 and 7 are parallel prophecies about the same world empires. Second, they give us 2 vital perspectives, how humanity sees its own glory versus how God sees its violent nature. Third, both visions make it crystal clear that all human kingdoms will eventually fall. And finally, and most importantly, both of them end with the establishment of God's unbreakable, eternal kingdom through Jesus Christ, the stone and the Son of Man. And that leads us with a really powerful question to think about. When you look at the world today, at the nations and powers that rise and fall, what do you see? Do you see a glorious statue, or do you see ravenous beasts? How does understanding these 2 perspectives from a prophecy thousands of years old change how you view not just the past, but the future that's still unfolding right in front of us?